Hello? Hello?
Podcast Network Asia.
Welcome to She Talks Peace, a podcast that highlights the role of women peacebuilders around the world in bringing lasting peace and security to communities. Eavesdrop on their communities and get to know their stories. From the Philippines to Malaysia, from Indonesia to Palestine, from Myanmar to the United States. Their dreams and hopes for a world without violence and a world where every woman and girl can be whoever she wants to be. Hosted by Amina Rasul Bernardo, President of the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy. This is She Talks Peace.
Salam, dear listeners. This is Amina Rasul from the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy, saying hello from Manila, Philippines. And as we are taping, the world is celebrating International Day of Peace. But you know what? In the Philippines, it's also the day that we commemorate the Proclamation of Martial Law. And this was done during the administration of the late President Ferdinand E. Marcos. So it's a little strange that both days are commemorated on the same day, essentially. But maybe not, because martial law was promulgated in the Philippines by then President Marcos. Yes, according to him and the security establishment, there were threats to national security. And the proclamation of martial law focused its attention on two threats: the Communist Party of the Philippines, with its armed groups all over the country, especially in the rural poor and the urban poor communities, and also cited the Muslim insurgents as a threat. But my recollection of the time is that the Muslim secessionists were really not an organized armed group. I mean, we had Muslim leaders who kept on talking about our history, how the sovereignty, the autonomy of the sultanates of Sulu were essentially stolen by the Philippine Republic when the US government gave the sultanates to the keeping of the Philippine government when the Declaration of Independence, when the United States gave independence to the Philippines. But because of the Declaration of Martial Law and the fear of many young Muslims, my relatives included, and many Muslim leaders as well, about what martial law could mean to the Muslim communities, this actually forced the Moro National Liberation Front to come together and organize itself as an armed group. But there are so many things to discuss about this, and I was thinking that the perfect person to help me talk about this would be Salma Rasul, who's a lawyer, and she runs the Islamic Legal Studies program of the very prestigious University of the Philippines College of Law. Salma used to be based in Maryland, USA, as an immigration lawyer, but decided to come home as our mother was getting on in years. I guess you could say Salma was very homesick and missed our mother very much. And as you can tell, Salma is my youngest sister. Welcome, Salma.
Hi.
Hello,
Assalamualaikum.
sister.
Yes.
Alaikum assalam. So, how's Mama?
Oh, as well as can be. I bet
Comfortable?
she. Yes, I bet she's. You know how her schedule was like before, right? You cannot place her in a situation where she's not doing something. So I think she's feeling a bit repressed because she can't go out and her mobility is restricted.
Yeah, and I know very well that she's scared of you.
Of course not.
Of course she is.
Of course not.
All you have to do is frown, and
No.
Mama and our late
Youngest
mother would be so afraid.
youngest child rules.
This is the youngest child syndrome,
Yes.
the dictator in the family.
Spoiled brat syndrome.
By the way, what do you remember of martial law? You were very young at the time, the early days
Yeah.
of martial law. What do you remember?
Primary school. Well, I remember we had to wake up very early, form a queue in the school quadrangle, sing the national anthem, and do the Pledge of Allegiance, which was required. And there's this new song, May Bagong Silang. We had to memorize that.
Oh yeah, that's right. I
Yeah,
forgot
we had
about
to
that.
sing that. Can you can you imagine? So
Can you
um,
still remember that song?
may bagong silang, may
Lang,
bago ng
lang,
buhay,
buhay. Oh my!
bagong dagat sa bagong lipunan. That was a
So what
long song. It was a march.
was there a curfew when you were
Yes.
in grade school? What time was the curfew?
Well, because it was in Holo. Remember, my primary grades, elementary was in Holo, and there was the threat of the MNLF then, right?
Right,
So there was a curfew at 6 p.m.
six p.m.
Nobody can go out. And then of course, I because of the years that we've been exposed to military trucks, soldiers, so we
That's
could
true.
see trucks patrolling the neighborhood streets,
That's true.
trucks, soldiers with no M16s as yet. It was the old one, Garand, and
The brand,
yeah,
okay.
you know, patrolling the streets. And you have there was no FX as yet. We had owner-driven jeeps.
Because
So
at that time, I was already in college. So
yeah,
I was at the University of the Philippines, and the fear level was very high.
I
Because remember, I
remember.
was, I was an activist,
Yeah,
and
and our
we
parents
used,
were worried.
we used to march from the University of the Philippines in Quezon City all the way down to the U.S. Embassy or Mendiola to protest imperialism and corruption and authoritarianism. Yeah, I remember
And you
Papa and
remember
Mama were so worried
worried.
about me.
And remember telecommunications na then was so how do you say it? Archaic.
Yeah, I remember the chancellor of the campus came to see me to tell me how worried Papa was and that I was supposed to go home.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I went home immediately. I think I stayed a semester in the university before Mama and Papa finally forced me to go home to Sulu to be safe. But those were really interesting years at
Interesting
the
times.
University of the Philippines. Yeah, and one of the important things that I remember from those years was how martial law actually galvanized young Muslims to action, and gave force to the Moro National Liberation Front. And the chair, Nurulaji Miswari, at the time was just an instructor at the University of the Philippines. And I remember he was soft spoken, He was a historian. He was quiet, and he became the rallying force of young Muslims when they organized the Moro National Liberation Front. And he and the members of the MNLF waged decades of armed conflict against the government, which forced government to sue for peace. That was pretty amazing. But Salma, do you remember what Mama and Papa were doing at the time of martial law? Mama was an elected government official, right?
Yeah,
She was
provincial
already,
board member.
yeah, provincial board member.
Hmm. I
And
think she was the only official from the Liberal Party who was elected. All the others lost.
yes, they were all nationalista.
Yes, who
She
won.
was, yeah, that's right, the only opposition member to win.
Two. Yeah.
And
So
I
from
remember campaigning. Do you remember how the campaign went? That
oh
even the boys and you even created a jingle.
yes,
What was the jingle again?
to the tune of Tawi Tawi Beach. We changed we changed the lyrics, and it was the first time ever that a jingle was used for local campaigns. And we went barangay to barangay, house to house on our yellow Reynolds. No, not Reynolds.
Yeah, Renault. Yeah,
Renault June buggy
yeah, the tune
with,
buggy. That's right.
with a loudspeaker, and then playing a tape version of the jingle. So that was the first time ever. And then only because of the political, because Mama was in the opposition, right? And because we were under martial law, it was not, uh, I think we were advised, or at least Mama was advised, not to use adults in the campaign.
That's
So
right.
only, so children, we could actually go in and out of the neighborhoods, barangays, without stressing uh, opposition candidates or the campaign or even the military establishment, because we were kids. So what can we do? They could not say that we were part of the MNLF or
We
you
weren't
know.
dangerous.
So we were able to go to barangays which were not held by the opposition, which were bailiwicks of the other candidates.
Dear listeners, if you're wondering about our conversation, our mother is Santanina Rasul. She is the first Muslim woman ever elected to the Philippine Senate, which is a major feat because in the Philippines, senators are elected nationally, not by district or by province,
Mm.
nationally. And the Muslim population of the country is maximum 10%. It's almost impossible for a Muslim to win nationally a Senate seat, but she did. And not only that, she's the first Muslim ever to be re-elected. So she had 2 terms in the Senate, but alas, she's also the last Muslim from Muslim Mindanao elected to the Senate.
Oh,
And
with
she has done so much for the nation and also for our people in Muslim Mindanao, right? Hey, Salma,
yes.
we have a young, a new graduate who wants to know more about our mother, about Mina Rasul. So, shall we welcome her in? She's
Sure.
Bits Alcibar, and Bits just graduated from Ateneo.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so Bits graduated with a degree in AB Diplomacy and International Relations from Ateneo de Manila University. and she has a passion for upholding human rights in the Philippines. She wants to be a political journalist, and she's looking forward to that career, or international human rights development. She has a specialization in East and Southeast Asian studies. So, welcome, Bits.
Hi, Ma'am
Hi.
Marie and Ma'am Salma.
Hello.
Thanks for
Hey,
having me here.
Bits. Yeah.
Hello.
So, so you want to know more about our mom, about Senator Rasul?
Yep.
She celebrated her
Birthday.
92nd birthday, right? On
Yes.
September 14th. So,
Yeah.
Bits, what do you want to know about Senator Nina Rasul?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm a fresh graduate. And even though I'm an advocate for human rights and a women's rights advocate as well, I haven't really been in the thick of women's rights advocacy for very long. So I'm only vaguely familiar with the progression of women's rights, especially here in the Philippines. So I think learning about Senator Rasul as a model of the empowered Filipino woman would be a really good place to start. And I guess I'd like to ask you guys about your experience growing up with her. You've already touched on it earlier, but I want to know when you were little, what was it like having Senator Rasul as your mother?
Well, my earliest recollection of my mom, because I'm the firstborn, she did really strike me as a woman of ambition. She was a mom. She cooked, she cleaned the house, she went marketing. She read a lot though, and she made sure that we were disciplined and did our share of uh, of the work, like sweeping the floor. And at the time, bits there were no vacuum cleaners. Okay, we had husks. Have you ever seen that in the province? Coconut husk, and then they
To
do
scrub the
something. They
floor.
cut it in half, and then they do something so that it's like bristles, and you
Yeah.
scrub the floor with it. So we all did that bit. So that's my earliest recollection of our mom. But when Salma was growing up, mom was already she already started a career in government. So what's your earliest recollection, Salma?
Oh, I remember being her first student using her phonosyllabic method. She taught me how to read and write when I was, what, 5 years old?
Five
Oh,
or four? You were a
Well,
terror.
between 4 and 5. And I ended up being able to read even newspapers. So I was like her guinea pig. So she tried the lessons on me to see if I could catch up with the modules and if there was ease in understanding the way she presented the phonosyllabic lessons. So for me, it was fun because there were drawings, although Mama was not a good artist. She had to get someone to draw the pictures of the animals. So I learned pretty fast.
Yeah,
right.
a little bit about that. When when mom was younger, so starting out in government, one of her friends, um, then Executive Secretary Salas, who later on joined the United Nations, told her, Santanina, your people have the highest level of adult illiteracy in the whole country. And my mother said,
Could
of
not
course,
believe it.
that's not true. But being a very studious person, she decided to do her research and found out that it was really true. That a huge percentage of the Muslim population, the adults, could not read, could not write. So she started thinking about what she could do to rectify the situation. Found out that a friend of hers, a Malaysian friend of hers, had developed a phonosyllabic method of teaching literacy to children. So our mom started to develop a methodology for teaching adults. And all of us, there are six of us in the family, three boys and three girls. All of us participated in developing
Manual.
this, this manual that she was putting together. It's called Magbasa Kita, which is Tausug for Let Us Read. So the older ones, me, Fatima, Amrusi, Junjun, we would contribute stories. Because the way she does it, if you're teaching a word, for instance, to illustrate the letter S, then you would say snake, but you would have to have a story about that snake. And our brothers, they were really terrible. They'd come up with green stories because
Oh.
they were yeah, they tell our mom, yes, but you're teaching adults. They like the stories more because they're green. But the
No.
thing is, Magbasa Kita was so effective that years later, the Department of Education asked her to teach teachers in the Department of Education on the methodology. So from north to south, up to today, there are still teachers who remember her very well because they learned how to use the Magbasa Kita phonosyllabic method. And I believe they're still using it, right, Salma?
Yes. In fact, one of our, how do you say this? Uh, Proteges, your protege at the National Youth Commission, who's now a mayor in Bumaka, Quezon, wanted sought permission to use the primer for classes in Gumaka
That's
as
right.
part of their alternative learning system.
And this predates Sesame Street bits.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Long before Sesame Street, she was
Right.
already using the phonosyllabic method to teach adults to read and write.
So
Pretty,
Right.
the
pretty
difference
amazing.
is you don't teach the name of the letter, but you teach the sound. So when
That sound.
you get the symbol for the letter S, we were taught that that symbol means we don't we when we learned all the sounds and learned to couple two sounds together to form syllables like s and a is as, and then you couple
Right.
syllables together to make words. So when we completed learning all the sounds, that's the only time we learned that S icon is actually the letter S. So we were taught the sounds first before the name of the letter.
Of the alphabet, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why Bits, some people used to call her the mother of illiterates
So what?
Oh.
What?
All right.
because she really did. She was you won't believe this Bits, but she traveled on her own, even by bus, from Manila all the way to the Cordilleras, up in the mountains.
Oh.
So she could go meet the teachers, teach them the methodology, and then she'd come back home, stay with us, and then she'd take another bus and go to Bicol again
Oh.
to teach. Very young, but people really loved her because her mother is not just beautiful, but she's kind. She's very patient, not like Salma. She's terrible.
Oh,
Very patient. And so all the illiterate students of hers, I guess, they treated her like their mom. So she's the mother of illiterates.
Wait, so she was teaching adult illiterates?
yes.
How did,
Yes.
like, as a like, this was during her stint as a public school teacher, right?
No,
No.
that
No.
was her
So,
advocacy.
No.
So she was
oh,
the
so
original. She
this
was
was
the
a totally
empowered
separate.
woman
Yeah.
working as civil society long before we had civil society in Muslim Mindanao.
Mm.
She was already
Oh,
doing
so she was just doing this on her own.
Yep.
on her own. Nobody
Wow.
initially she she did it on her own. She used her own resources, but as word about her effective methodology came, then organizations would, talk to her, provide grants so that
Right.
she could do the same in their communities, and then later on it became a nationwide program. In fact, Salma, isn't that one of the reasons why the late President Corazon Aquino chose her to be one of the senatorial candidates, because she was so well known for Magbasta Kita?
Yes, and because the the beneficiaries were mostly underserved communities, those without access to formal education. And, and if you talk about education for adults, at that time there was no alternative learning programs,
Yep,
nor
none.
adult education classes, none. This was the first ever, especially for communities in our neck of the woods in Sulu, Basilan, Tawi-Tawi, and mostly in Muslim areas where as what Amina said, the rates of illiteracy was quite high, and it hasn't changed much. We still have high illiteracy rates to this day.
Yeah. Because
Oh,
government really has to focus attention on making the adult illiterate literate.
right.
Our educational system is geared towards children. If
Mm-hmm.
you're an adult and you're illiterate, you have to find your way to the school or the Department of Education and apply for a course.
Uh-huh.
Mama's style was very different. She'd go to the village, she'd talk to the village elders and tell them, if you can bring 25 students together, I will train a teacher, and that teacher who lives in the village can now teach the adults. So by doing that, when you graduate the first set of literates who are now functionally literate adults, you have a teacher remaining who can continue teaching the others. I mean, how difficult is it for government to continue that, right? But alas, it's not sexy enough. There are no buildings to inaugurate it, so what can
Yeah.
you do?
and
Right.
they and they seem to be stuck with this edifix complex that there must be a physical structure, right, for
Right.
formal classes. But adults, because they have work, they don't really want to go to a school to be
Right.
taught how to read and write. So bringing the classes to their barangays where they live would be more accessible. And of course, you have to consider the ego of the adults, right? Remember, Amina, during the first day of classes, only women will attend, no men,
Oh,
especially in the
And
Muslim
they bring their
communities.
children.
Yeah. But if you see, because most of the classes were held either in the homes of the barangay captain or where the barangay office is located, you could see in the windows the men folk peeping and seeing, are the lessons hard, and see how their wives or their aunts were being taught, and if the lessons were easy for the women, then the following day, because of course the women folk will go back to their room saying, no, we were able to participate and recite. The class would swell, the numbers will swell, and you have men now going to attend classes. So interesting.
right. That's so
So,
interesting.
Yeah.
yep,
I like the
hundreds of
idea of,
thousands.
I really like
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
idea of taking the service to them
Two,
instead of
yes,
like
that's right.
making them come to the government. I think that's something like the government should really take note of now in terms of education.
Because you also address the comfort levels of the beneficiaries.
That's true.
If you put them in a strange environment, that they have to be properly dressed because it's in a classroom, and most of them
Right.
come from their work. Some are fisher folk, some are farmers. They don't really have money to spare to clothe themselves in what student look, so they
Right.
dress, what they're comfortable with.
It could be
So,
very alienating for
yep.
them. Right. So you mentioned earlier that that Senator Rasul's advocacy in adult literacy um, prompted President Cory to choose her as a candidate for the Senate. So can you tell me a little bit more about that also? Like how did your mother come from teaching illiterates to the Senate?
Well, first a funny story about how she got the notice that she was
Mm.
being invited by the president to be a candidate. Salma, tell the story.
So I think Mama was out with my brother, Pop, Yusuf. I think they were, I don't know, they were shopping or doing something. So I was the only one in the house. So I received a call. And then the person says, "Oh, this is from Malacanang." At that time, uh,
Salma, what's Malacanang?
uh, office of the president. Okay. They call and say, "Oh, this is from the office of the president. Maybe speak with Mrs. Santanina Rasul." So at that time, because of the ongoing noontime show, prank calls were prevalent. You know, Silvia La Torres
Oh.
telephone number. So people were calling using. So I thought it was a prank. I said, "Hey, like, like, I will not answer this," and I hang up. They called again. I said, "Is this a prank call?" I said, "No, this is from the office of the president." So, okay, so I took down the message. And then uh, there were no cell phones at that time, okay? So I think Mama always calls, regularly to check on us, what we need in the house, if we need to buy stuff. So she asked my brother to call me. I said, "Pop, you better come home. Ask Mama to come home because the president wants to speak with her." And my brother again thought I was pranking him. Said, "Oh, I don't believe you." And go, "No, no, please tell her to come home. Otherwise, it's a loss of her." And she really has got to call this person in the office of the executive secretary. So they come home, and then at first they didn't really believe me. I had to explain. I said, "I'll call this number." And when they finally called the number, and the person asked, "Office of the president," that's the only time that they believe. So it turns out this is from uh, June Factoren was the executive secretary then, was he? Or he was the
Uh,
one in charge for the search committee for candidates
yeah,
to the Senate. I think they
June
had a
Factoran became secretary
Secretary
for
of Natural Resources.
Agrarian Natural Resources, and
Oh,
also the late Senator Nene Pimentel, who
the
was at
two of
that
them.
time secretary for local government. So they were
Government.
in charge of looking for candidates.
So they had this matrix with factors that would determine the most suitable candidate for the Senate. So there was the educational profile, community service, reputation for honesty, sincerity, stuff like that, and name recall, stuff like that. So in all the categories, Mama ranked high. So uh, President Cory then actually never, if she met my mom, not really. It was her husband, Ninoy, who knew my mom.
Oh.
So she was surprised. "Who is this Muslim lady? I don't believe that she has all these qualities." So they
Oh.
asked Mama to go to the office of the president, and they interviewed her. And sure enough, when they talked about her experience, her academic background, and people who were in the inner circle knew of Mama's credentials when she was a UP student and when she was an official provincial board, and her work in education, in adult literacy. So they vouched for her because of personal knowledge. So then Secretary Factoran told my brother Cheng, my older brother, said, "If you see this, there was this huge board, and there were several names there, and Mama's name was there. They had check marks in all the categories of qualities for a good candidate for the Senate. So yes, she was among the 24 candidates.
Back in the day,
Back in
when
the day.
they actually looked at
Yeah, credentials.
qualification.
Right.
Oh, but Salma,
Ah,
tell the other funny story about how she got committed to run because she never had any intention of running. So do you
yeah.
remember that
Oh,
story with Bob? Tell
Uh,
bits about that.
so from remember they went home. They went home, right? Said, "Oh, you better call Malacanang, Office of the President." And the Office of the President, the staff said, can you come to Malacanang and so that they could interview her and talk about uh, the candidacy. Although the call did not say that she was to run for the Senate. All of us thought it was like a local position, maybe provincial board or vice governor, but not the Senate. So uh, my mom was accompanied by my brother Pop. All the others were, I think Cheng was already working, right? Fatima was with in DBP. You were in the States.
I was abroad, yes.
Fatima was also abroad already. So
She was in New
uh,
York.
Cheng Pop accompanied my mom. So then they were ushered into the private office of President Aquino. And I don't know if Bolsi was there, but anyway, President Aquino was saying, Nina, I want you to run for the Senate. And then my mama was very reluctant because, I mean, local governance is way, way different from a national post and legislative, right? So I said,
Right.
Ma'am, it's maybe I'm not prepared to run because at the time we just relocated from Bolo after the burning, and she had other things that she wanted to attend to. But President Aquino, so but I need people in the Senate who have the same mindset as myself, so we can push for programs for development in areas such as Mindanao, Sulu, especially in the areas where we come from. So she looked at my brother and said, "What do you think, young man? Should your mother run?" And then my brother said, "Of course, she should run." So my mother just looked at my brother and said, "So there,
So my
committed
younger
her,
brother, Pop,
committed
was
my
the
mom to
one
run."
who committed our
Yes,
mother to
and he
run for the Senate. So that's the story of how she became a senatorial candidate,
you
Bits.
could
I love
you could
that.
say
That's
she
so
was victims of her two youngest children.
funny. Right. So maybe now we can talk a little bit about her work as a senator, and maybe some of her major laws, especially since, what, like, she represented Muslim Mindanao. Maybe, uh, how did she represent Muslim Mindanao in the Senate?
Well, when she was elected to the Senate, she was very conscious of the fact that she was a senator for all Filipinos, not just Muslim Mindanao.
Right.
And this is the strangest thing. I mean, I really have to pay tribute to my mom's integrity and courage. When she was in the Senate, the civil servants, because she was the chair of the very powerful
Civil service.
committee on civil service, civil servants would go to her complaining that they were being eased out of their positions because they had been appointed during the Marcos years and seen as sympathizers of the late, at the time, dictator Ferdinand Marcos. So they were being kicked out to make room for new civil servants. And my mother, when she started getting all of these complaints and seeing how it was affecting hundreds and thousands of civil servants who had done nothing wrong except be appointed during the Marcos years. So she actually organized committee hearings to look into this problem and then came up with a bill which later on became a law that stopped that practice. That if you are a civil servant and you are protected, your tenure is protected by the civil service, then you cannot be taken out. And then the next thing that happened was those who had like 2 year contracts, they got easily kicked out, even if they had been working in government for 20 years, bits, and
Casual.
there were hundreds and thousands of them. So my mother prepared, that civil service bill that became law, giving them the right to become tenured if
Mhm.
they had served continuously for at least 7 years.
Mhm.
And the effect of that was hundreds of thousands of Philippine civil servants were saved.
Wow.
And everywhere she went, a lot of people would come to her and thank her for saving their jobs. And that was the very first law that she passed. And she did that knowing full well that it would run counter to
Mhm.
what members of her own party wanted.
Right.
But I think we should really remember Senator Rasul for the work that she did, the laws that she passed, empowering women.
Right.
Uh, did you know that the celebration of Women's Day, Women's Month in the Philippines is thanks to our mom? We
Oh.
moved like crazy. Went to Congress, went to the House of Representatives to get allies and have them pass the bill in Congress. She moved in the Senate, and then it became law. And then there's the Women in Development and Nation Building Act. This
Ah,
is a very powerful piece of legislation because it required government to set aside a certain percentage of budget for programs that would capacitate women. At the time, they did not have yet a fixed percentage rate because the men in the Senate were not so keen on it. Later on, Senator Leticia Ramos Siacan was able to fix the percentage at 5% in the Magna Carta for women, but it was Mama who first put that on the table. And then you remember Salma
mhm.
opening up the Philippine Military
Military
Academy to women.
and
That was part
PNP
of the law,
and the PNP Academy to women. So
and that was really rejected by the
mhm,
cadets. They didn't want any women in
women, they
PMA.
said, the usual objection, like we'll have to have separate bathing facilities for them. You know, I said, but that can be easily addressed. If you
True.
look at her bills, you could say that it's a precursor for the more comprehensive bills on women. First was declaring March 8th as the day for women, right? And then it became the other in the previous congresses. It became month long celebration. Uh, the Women in Development Act, her setting aside, her indicating the requirement that funds should be set aside for programs that would benefit women. This became the precursor for the GAD provision in the Magna Carta for Women, and also and encouraging and opening up the PMA, which was a very male dominated environment for women cadets. And eventually, even the PNP, although the PNP at the time did accept, but it became less stringent. I mean, they relaxed conditions for allowing women to enroll in the Philippine National Police Academy also.
But I think what really drove her bits was education. When
That's right.
when she started, working after graduating from the University of the Philippines. She taught public school. She taught third grade, I think. And the MNLF chair, Nur
Usually was
Miswari,
her,
was one of her
students.
students. And Mama always said that he was a quiet boy. But when she was in the Senate, she passed laws that focused on education. So, for instance, she was the one responsible for the creation of the Literacy Coordinating Council
Council.
that's lodged within the Department of Education so that government government agencies could come together, including the Economic Planning Group, NEDA, National Economic Development Authority. They could come together and support the needs to make our adults literate. That there I think the Literacy Coordinating Council is failing a bit, and she was responsible for making the Teachers College, known as the Philippine Normal College. She made that into a university so that we could have more resources to teach more
Teachers,
teachers. So
educators.
that the love of her life has always been um, education. Bits, it's just unfortunate that Salma and I, no matter how we try, we can never be our mom. Sad.
Oh,
Sad but
no, but
true.
I think your work now, what you're doing, like especially in the PCID, is like a continuation of her legacy, though. Even though perhaps you think like you can't match, your mom's level, I guess it's still a continuation of her legacy,
Yeah.
especially since she was the person who really educated both of you on like public service and stuff like that. I would say so. I still think it's a really good feat what you guys have accomplished.
I guess when you have a nurturing, encouraging mother, that empowers you. You have a mother who listens and who doesn't really push you into, no, actually, she did push me. Now, come to
Really?
think of it, Bits, like you, wanted a career in journalism, but I was enrolled in the University of the Philippines School of Economics. And at that time, that was a quota course. They only allowed, I don't know how many, 50 or 30 students a year. And I got in. So I wanted to transfer to journalism. And my mom said, look, anybody can be a journalist, especially, you can write well. Stick to journalism, learn the basics, and if you still want to have a career in journalism afterwards, then you can do so. But I was, hard headed. No, I want journalism. So you know what she did, Bits?
What?
Because her classmate in UP at that time, a friend of hers, was at that time the Secretary of Finance, Cesar Virata. So my mother took me to meet her classmate, Cesar Virata, and then she told Secretary Virata, my daughter wants to shift from economics to journalism. Will you talk some sense into her? So, what am I supposed to do? There I am with Cesar Virata, and I'm saying economics is an important course. He said, finish
Yeah.
it. And as soon as you graduate, you come and see me and you join me in my technical staff. So what was I supposed to do? So my mom, boy, she knew how to pressure. Oh my goodness. Did you ever pressure your Salma?
Nope.
Oh yeah, you pressured her.
Nope.
It's different for the bunso.
Yeah.
It's
Sabi sa'yo,
true. What's your mom
youngest
like?
rule.
Does your mom also try to direct your career choices, or she gives you a free hand?
No, but she definitely gives me a free hand. She's like a very young, very cool mom. So
Mm.
she lets me do anything I want. But she said her only rule is that I don't end up broke in the future. It's up to me what I want to do. That's it.
So I suppose the important lessons in life we really learned from our mothers when we
Mhm.
were very young.
So, Ma'am Amina and Ma'am Salma, what lessons have you learned from your mother that you can pass on to maybe other advocates of human rights and women's rights? Mhm.
Ah, I remember two lessons, two sayings that she would repeat time and time again. One was from, I think, Benjamin Franklin, because sometimes we get tired of doing our homework. So instead, and remember, when I was growing up, we didn't have television in the province. We had books. So you would think if I'm reading a book, she'd be happy, right? But no, instead of doing my mathematics homework, I'm reading Ivanhoe or Three Musketeers. And she would say, no, you have to focus on your mathematics, even though you hate it. You have to keep trying and trying. Because she said, you know, a success is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. So just because you're smart doesn't mean you're going to be successful in life. You've got to try and try
Mhm.
and try. So it's the first lesson I ever got from my mom. The second, I think we were talking about politicians and government service and integrity. And my mother would say, corruption is like a crack in China. You have a beautiful piece of porcelain and there's a crack in it. No matter how hard you try to repair it, the crack will remain for all to see. And that was how she looked at government service and integrity, the need to keep your integrity intact. Because even if you think nobody knows, somebody always knows, and you know. So those are two important lessons I learned from my mom. How about you, Salma?
Remember when there are things that, there are problems in the community, people go to her to ask for help, right? So when we asked her about this, I said, "Oh, that person, they've been asking help for you, but there's no gratitude, so they're ingrates." My mom will say, actually, I don't know if it was Papa who said it first, but Mama kept on repeating it to us. What the left hand does, the right hand shouldn't. No. So he said, if you want to help, just help. Don't don't think that you're helping because you expect something in return in the future. Said if you can see a problem and you can help address and help this person address that problem, just do so willingly to the best of your capacity and capability, and forget that you helped her. So if you gave money, forget that you gave, you gave money or helped her in some, I said, because God is all seeing and will know, and uh, rewards will be in the hereafter, not in the current. So that's pretty much what she has been doing, helping people, going to the underserved communities, like her literacy classes. Remember during the height of in 1974, after the burning of a law, remember Amina, she came from the pilgrimage, right?
Yep.
So she came, all she had was her clothes from her trip abroad. But she went to all her friends, her college sorority sisters, her colleagues in government then, and asked for help to bring food, staples, clothing to Holo, because what was 2/3 of Holo got burned down.
Eighty
And at
percent of the town was burned. Only the cathedral, our school, Notre Dame, the hospital, those
our
remained. Everything else
our
burned.
residence was actually shelled and got razed to the ground. The only thing left was the stairs and the plumbing of the second, third floor bathroom. So my brothers, nobody knew where they were. So mama brought in food, clothing, and had to ask assistance from the Navy to allow her to bring this relief goods to the community. And because there was a no there was news blackout, nobody knew what was happening in Holo at the time. So unlike what happened in Marawi and Zamboanga, people knew about it. So you have civil society helping. In Holo, nobody helped except for the
Right.
relatives and friends of the residents.
Also
So
because nobody knew.
that's right, because
There was, yeah,
reporting
the
was
news
zero.
blacked out. And nobody could go in.
Yeah, actually.
Only the
Yeah.
military could go in.
So I
Those were really
so
desperate times. I was already in college at the time, and when the Holo burned to the ground, um, our brothers were in Holo.
yeah, three
They were
brothers
under the care of our aunt,
who just
and
gave birth.
when the shelling happened,
Yeah.
nobody knew what had become of all of them. So for days, we didn't know. And when they were finally found, and they told us the horror stories, that they suffered, all those days are going to be etched in our minds forever. By the way, when you're talking about lessons learned, the style of nurturing bits. I think maybe tell me if it's the same with in your family. But in our family, our father, who later became a member of the cabinet of President Justado Macapagal and later on became ambassador to Saudi Arabia, um, he and our mother never pushed our brothers to excel in school politics or sports and never pushed the daughters us to excel in sewing or cooking. So what happened, Bits, which is really weird, the three daughters, myself, Fatima, and Salma, we were the ones who were engaging in school politics. We were editors of the school newspaper. We were entered into contests for oratorical contests and winning oratorical contests. And you know what our brothers were doing? They're playing music. They were members of the band. And our father and our mother never said anything about it. So they continued to nurture. Our brothers liked music. They were, Papa bought guitars for them. The daughters were into governance and politics and all that. We got
Right.
all the support. Are your parents the same, kids?
For me, growing up, it it was sort of just like because it's just me and my little brother. My brother and I were just given free reign, also to do whatever we want when it came to our extracurricular activities. So, and my brother and I were like interested in a lot of the same things. So we did piano together, we did musical theater together, and then along the way our interests sort of diverged. Like I started to become more into politics, and he started to go into sports, and then later on science and technology. So yeah, we were both nurtured sort of in the same way, just pushed to do whatever we wanted, but not ever pressured to pursue certain paths. Yeah.
So it looks like our parents were modern parents, Alma. Aren't
yeah,
we lucky?
Yeah.
yes, because they encourage us to take non-traditional roles, right? Or the expected roles. Remember, at that time, our father's family was like one of the established clans in Sulu. So, of course, because we were his children, the community expected us to be what? Snobbish, aristocratic. But no, Mama said no. So we sold newspapers.
Oh yeah, our brothers sold
Me,
newspapers
I
to
was
earn.
how
And
old
you
was I?
were
I
you
was
were you
yes,
selling?
with my other with Pop, the 1 year older than me. Pop was what,
But
7 years, seven?
you were unfair.
No,
You
no, no,
targeted who you were selling newspapers
no.
to.
But we Mama would give us like, oh, okay, you have five newspaper units, right? So I said, but she said, okay, you can sell, but only in front of the house. So that was our territory. So our aunts would pass by, said, "Oh, look at Abraham's kids. They're so hardworking and diligent.
Selling
Let me
newspapers.
let me buy one paper." And of course, the newspaper then was what, 25 cents, and they give us like 2 pesos, 5 pesos, and keep the change. So we were so happy. We often sold the five papers and had more money than we could count. So we would just patrol the front gate of the house, and that was our selling station.
I didn't realize you were selling newspapers. I
Yeah,
thought only the
me and
boys were
Pop,
selling
me
newspapers.
and Pop in front.
Ah,
Of course, Jun and Cheng, they had their own routes.
yeah,
So
they had routes bits
yeah,
selling
Oh,
newspapers in
so as
Sulu.
so aside from us having our doing household chores like cleaning, scrubbing the floor, cleaning the stairs, washing windows, we also had to earn our extra money for summer. So that's one, selling newspapers. So when our cousins, from the Rasul side would say, "Oh," and my uncle says, "Look at the children of Abraham. They're so thrifty and hardworking." So we learned the beauty of working for your money, for your spending money. So that's how we earned
right.
our allowances.
Yeah. Hard work.
Hard
99%
work.
perspiration,
Mhm.
1% inspiration. It was
I
really
love it.
great growing up in Sulu at that
Mhm.
time, Bits. I wish you could have, been,
Yeah.
could have visited us when we were there, because I remember uh, our house had a third floor,
Mm.
and on moonlit nights, all of the children in our neighborhood would gather in the crossroads and we'd play patintero, hopscotch, right?
Mm.
Or other games, but under the moonlight. And our parents would be watching from the third floor of each house to make sure that no harm ever came to us. And sometimes we'd stay out there playing until 9 o'clock in the evening, and nothing ever happened to us. It was completely safe. It was Holo was beautiful.
Mm.
Growing up as a child in Holo had the best memories for me. And it's unfortunate that today, even if there's no curfew, at 6 o'clock everybody just stays home. Nobody stays in the streets. So this is the situation we're in today. Bits sad,
Yeah.
but true. And at the end of the day, when I look at when everything changed, I think really everything changed when martial law was proclaimed. Because when that happened, civilian authority was superseded by
Military.
military authority. And no matter how hard we try today, it's very difficult to reform the, the system. But
Yeah.
hey, we'll keep trying, right? After all, the three of us, we talk peace, right?
Yes.
So I hope we have let you enjoy our stories about our mom, former Senator Santanina Rasul. And I hope that our
Yeah.
listeners also enjoyed the stories that we have told. And I guess there's nothing more we can say, Salma, except greet Mama. Happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday!
Happy
Happy
birthday,
birthday.
Mom. Happy 92nd.
Happy birthday.
So, dear listeners, I hope you enjoyed our conversation today with Bits Alcibar, who just recently graduated from the Ateneo de Manila University. And having said that, I hope you go and hug your moms, your grandmoms, because at the end of the day, the important lessons in life are the ones that we learn from our mothers. So thank you so much for joining us today. This is Amina Rasul from the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy saying bye for now. Don't forget, you can email us, send your thoughts, send your suggestions about speakers that you might want to hear from, and email us at shetalkspeacepodcast@gmail.com. Let me repeat that. shetalkspeacepodcast@gmail.com. Bye!
She Talks Peace is brought to you in partnership with Podcast Network Asia and Podmetrics, the easiest way to monetize your podcast. For more information, check out their website at podcastnetwork.asia and podmetrics.co.
The views and opinions expressed by the podcast creators, hosts, and guests do not necessarily reflect the official policy and position of Podcast Network Asia, the hosts of the program, or other programs of the network. Any content provided by the people on the podcast are of their own opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything.